Happy Halloween, everyone. Yep, today is Halloween. This is going to be my costume for Halloween. It is absolutely amazing. It's a great day for anyone who celebrates it, and I'm not going to be wearing this the entire time of the show, obviously, because I feel like it's muffling my voice. In fact, you know what? Let's take it off right now. All right. So, aside from that little introduction right there, happy Halloween, everybody. And we have a lot of sports to be covered. I do not want to talk about what happened yesterday, what transpired yesterday. You guys know exactly what happened if you guys follow any other sport aside from basketball, but that's besides the point. That's in the past. We're not talking about that. So in this first segment, we are going to talk about some NBA trade rumors. Now, this is a really big one because Giannis Antetokounmpo is apparently in some trade talks, which is very surprising. And I was not expecting, of all the players to be on the trade block, I was not expecting Giannis to be on it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then in the second segment, we are going to shift our focus over to Scottie Barnes and his injury and what that could mean for the Raptors. Where should the Raptors' next step be, what they should do. And then in the third segment, we're going to be looking at the matchup between Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren. That was one of the matchups that happened the other day, and it was one of the more exciting matchups of the day, in my personal opinion. And we're just going to go ahead and cover that and, how well they played against each other, the rivalry between those two, and just, all the context that you would need for that game. And then in the fourth segment, we're going to recap the rest of the games that went down the other night. It wasn't a good night for me with predictions, I will say that. I got a lot of things wrong, but aside from that, doesn't really matter. We also have a special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. And before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something that you've just been dying to share. We are all ears. If you really want your comment or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations. That way, they really help the show. They make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So if Super Chat's not really your thing, then that's all right. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment as well. GSMCpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about this rather surprising news. I will say it's very, very surprising to see this player on the trade block. Again, was not expecting to see Giannis, of all people, to be in trade conversations. Now, this isn't a joke. This isn't like just a random fan online speculating. There are actual articles that are talking about the possibility of Giannis getting traded. Not to mention the fact that Giannis himself said that there was a possibility that he would get traded from the Bucks. He said it himself. And now, with the start of the Milwaukee Bucks and their season, there's some people that think that there's some circling tension between the Bucks and Giannis, as well as the possibility that he could get traded. So, according to this article, the header of this article is Bucks' Giannis is linked to the Heat net by insider team's circle. So, we're going to go ahead and read what the rest of this article has to say. Now, NBA executives say there is an anticipation growing around the league that Milwaukee Bucks star Giannis Antetokounmpo could be traded this season. Teams are circling and hopeful. An anonymous executive of a Western Conference team told CBS Sports Bill Ryder. Another NBA executive told Ryder that they wouldn't be surprised if an Antetokounmpo trade happened by the February 8th trade deadline. A third executive for an Eastern Conference team said they have heard Antetokounmpo's preferred trade destinations would be the Miami Heat or the Brooklyn Nets. In other words, he might be pulling a Kevin Durant, where he joins the team that beat him, because we know the Miami Heat, they usually tend to beat the Milwaukee Bucks most of the time in the postseason. Not all the time, but sometimes. And it's very, very shocking to see Giannis, of all people, on the trade block. I mean, he's an MVP caliber player, and he is the one of the main reasons why the Bucks are so good, and why the Bucks have been good for the longest time. So seeing him on this trade block is rather questionable, and I really don't understand why these talks are even like taking place. Like, this is something that I really genuinely did not expect at all. Especially now, he's averaging 28 points per game, 11 rebounds through the Bucks' 1-3 starts in this season. Yes, the Bucks are 1-3. They are one of the bottom teams in the Eastern Conference. I don't really expect that to be the case through the entirety of the season, but given how Doc Rivers has been absolutely abysmal as the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, maybe it's a good thing that he gets traded, but I digress. The Bucks, they open up their season with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard combining for 55 points in a win over the Philadelphia 76ers. It's strong performance coming in from Antetokounmpo in that matchup, and Lillard, but they haven't been enough to really save the Bucks from 3 straight losses since that one win this season. And the two stars most recently combined for 63 total points in a loss to the Boston Celtics on Monday, losing 119-108. And after they expressed frustration about the Bucks' lack of identity after last Sunday's loss to Brooklyn, Antetokounmpo shared a more optimistic perspective when speaking to reporters following the next day's loss of the Celtics. At the end of the day, we have a great team. I believe we will keep on playing better, learning from our mistakes. And Antetokounmpo said, eventually we are going to start winning games. I don't think we are far off. I do not care about the record. I care about keep on building people, being healthy, and get where we want to get. And after the Bucks suffered their second straight first-round exit from the playoffs last season, despite their trade for Damian Lillard last September, the pressure is on Milwaukee to make a much deeper playoff run in order to keep both him and Antetokounmpo bought into the franchise's hopes for repeating their 2021 title run. And Heat star Jimmy Butler is also potentially entering the free agency market following this season after declining his 2025-2026 player option, although previous reports indicate that Miami has little interest in trading him. Nets forward Cam Johnson has also been the subject of trade rumors amid the franchise's focus to acquiring draft stock. Now, should Milwaukee continue to flounder about and the Bucks consider trading Antetokounmpo, those names would be likely to come up in discussions of a possible deal with either team, which I think is absolutely egregious. I mean, you'd have to give up a lot of pieces in order to get me to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think that from an individual standpoint, Giannis is the second best NBA player in the league right now. Again, just right now. And I don't think there's anyone else aside from Jokic who's better than him. He has the scoring. He has the rebounding. He has the offensive production. He even has the defensive production. He can guard on the ball and off the ball. He has practically everything that you would expect to have in an all-star caliber player. Everything that you would need in an all-star caliber player. It would take a lot to get me personally to trade him. And I have no idea how solid these rumors are going to end up being, but anything can happen in today's league. And really, maybe the rumors are just they're just rumors to throw people off or something like that. That might be something that rumors try to do. It might be that way. I mean, there were several Cavs rumors and drama going on over the offseason about how they wanted to split up their team. Yet here the Cavaliers are, and they still haven't lost a single game. More on them later. But there was a whole bunch of drama going on in the offseason, but they've somehow really turned that around and flipped that on their heads. And they've turned this season into, so far, a very shocking season, opening up the season completely flawless. Like, I expected the Celtics would be the only flawless team remaining left in this league, but it turns out that one of those teams is the Cleveland Cavaliers. And that's very, very impressive to say the least, considering all the attention that they were getting from in the offseason and all the attention that they were getting in wanting to trade some of their players and wanting to try and rebuild on something. It doesn't really seem like that's really the case now. And who knows where these trade rumors are going to end up going, and how far they're going to be able to carry on with this, with the team and with the rest of the season. Because again, the trade deadline is around February 8th, I believe, and if it's a really long time until then, so anything can happen. If the Bucks don't end up winning some of these games, I wouldn't be surprised. But the first move I would make if the Bucks keep losing these games is getting rid of Darvin Ham and getting rid of Doc Rivers. I'm sorry, that coaching tandem is abysmal. It is not something that wins games. It's not something that you want on your team. It holds the team back, in my opinion. And I think those should be the people that you should get rid of before even thinking of getting rid of Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, not to mention, this would have, if they do get rid of Giannis Antetokounmpo, then this trade for Damian Lillard would have been considered a waste. I mean, Damian Lillard left Portland Trail, well, didn't really leave, but he requested a trade from the Blazers because he wanted to finally compete for a title. And now here is his chance to compete for the title, and the best player on the team is now in rumors to getting traded. He's going to be back in square one. Like, it would have been as if Dame had never left Portland to begin with, and he would still be stuck on a rather mediocre team where that he has to perform well in order for them to even do anything in the postseason or beyond that or in the regular season. And he's not the caliber, he's not that kind of player that can lead a dominant postseason run. I'm sorry to say this. I know he's a lot of people like really have him for being one of the more clutch players in the NBA. He does have that clutch reputation, but he's a terrible defender, and this is one of the many reasons why Portland has been unable to do anything in the postseason with Dame outside of 2019. And again, that's really that they almost lost in the second round if it wasn't for CJ McCollum being such a clutch shooter and closing the game out when they could. But again, this is very shocking seeing him on the trade block. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you guys think that Giannis would get traded before the trade deadline? Do you think that they'll stick with him throughout the entirety of the season? Do you think this is all just rumors and speculation? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. But it's all that I have for this first segment. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the second segment where I talk about Scottie Barnes and his injury with the Toronto Raptors in the most recent game that he played. I believe it was against the 76ers. I didn't really cover that because I didn't have much information on it. So I'll be right back after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be looking at Scottie Barnes' injury and what exactly this means for the Raptors moving forward in their season. So before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show. whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something you've been dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations. That way, if Super Chat's not really your thing, that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So let's go right ahead and talk about Scottie Barnes' injury. Now, if you guys have been tuning in for a while, you guys know that I'm really high on Scottie Barnes. I really like Scottie Barnes as a player. I really encouraged all of you to pick him for fantasy, and apparently the basketball gods have heard me talk about him highly, and they decided, whoop, now it's time for him to get hurt. It just always happens. I'm sorry if you guys ended up listening to me and picking Scottie Barnes for your fantasy team. I have failed you, but in hindsight, I mean, I can't predict injuries. No one can predict injuries. And there was no way I would have been able to know that Scottie Barnes could have gotten injured in any game. I mean, there's obviously a chance for that, but given how he doesn't really have that strong of an injury history, given how he was able to play in a majority of the games last season before getting injured, because he did get injured last season, I don't think that was a really tough concept to believe in with Scottie Barnes. And I know I ended up being wrong with picking him for fantasy because he is probably going to be injured for a long time. The Raptors announced on Wednesday that Scottie Barnes sustained a right orbital fracture on Tuesday by way of Nikola Jokic's elbow. And this might not sound really good for the Raptors, but this might be a blessing in disguise. Now, what do I mean by that? So, Barnes, he's going to be reevaluated in 3 weeks, and, hold on just 1 second, and it'll cover 12 games at minimum. So that's going to be at least 12 games where he doesn't play at the very least, right? And until he gets reevaluated. So, Toronto is already 1-3, one of the league's third worst point differential at minus 8.8. And their only win came against the 76ers that did not have Joel Embiid and Paul George. So, basically, Toronto is not good this year. And I didn't expect them to be good, let alone be good with Scottie Barnes. I don't expect them to be good without Scottie Barnes anymore anyways. So, I think now the next step for the Raptors is to try and... I hate saying this, but it's to tank. I mean, this might seem like the best possible move for them at this point. It's for a good reason. So maybe they make the play-in tournament, but the 2025 draft class is loaded with talent. They're going to have even beyond Cooper Flagg, who was just ranked as the best college basketball player in the recent ESPN rankings. And aside from Flagg, the rest of the draft class is going to have so much talent, way more talented than the previous draft class that, with, Zachary Rasacher, Alexander Sarr, Bronny James, just to name a few. And, I feel like at this point, given that we know how competent that draft class is, maybe now would be a good time to tank and try to get a high pick in the draft. And they should be using this absence as a way to accumulate as many losses as possible with a built-in excuse. Because here, our best player isn't playing in these games. So there's no real expectations for the Raptors to really do anything in this regular season, let alone do anything in the postseason. So it might be tanking time. It might be tanking time for the Raptors. Nobody likes to hear that word, honestly. In saying it is I really don't like that thought process at all. I mean, intentionally losing games and purposely trying to lose games, I don't really feel like that's something that that is good for the integrity of the game. But this is why the draft lottery is the draft lottery, so that way it sort of discourages people from tanking. And it discourages teams from tanking and discourages them from being able to... There's no real guarantee that you'll land the number one pick in the draft if you do tank and be the worst team in the NBA. We've seen that 2 years in a row with the Detroit Pistons, where they were the worst team in the NBA, but they still only ended up getting the 5th pick in the draft, and twice. So it's a little bit of a risk, but given how talented this draft class is expected to be, I don't think it's really that big of a deal. Like, if you don't get the number 1 pick, then you can get, even at the 5th pick, you'll probably still be able to get a solid player in this draft class if you end up picking right, obviously, and if that player ends up developing into the player that we expect them to be, because we know things happen. And there's a lot of things that is unclear when drafting rookies, so not everything is guaranteed, right? But as of right now, the league, it's been trying to flatten the lottery odds to take away at least some of the incentive to pursue losing as a means of better draft picks. But it no longer does you any good to be the absolute worst team in the league, right? Rather, as long as you're one of the worst 3 teams, you have the same 14.5% chance at landing a top pick, as the article continues saying. So, like they say about teams gunning for the top of the standings, games in November count the same as the games in March and April. By the time the calendar flips and after All-Star break, there are going to be a lot of teams who will be less interested in winning, for lack of a better term. Because given their standings, given the competitiveness of the Western Conference and the competitiveness of the Eastern Conference, they might already see, like, okay, this is not, we're not going to be able to do much in the postseason, probably not going to do much in the play-in either, so we might as well go ahead and try and get a higher pick in the draft. No need to try and win and get a higher pick in the draft, which, again, most people don't really like that because it encourages a bit of a losing attitude, and I understand that. That's not something that you want to constantly be doing, but Toronto is most likely, with this injury, they could get a head start in that race to being one of the bottom teams in the next 3 weeks. And it's worth it as of this rate. We all know about the talent of Cooper Flagg, but it goes beyond, as most experts believe that there are at least 5 players in the 2025 draft that could go to the number 1 overall pick in last year's draft class. Like, if they were drafted last year, a lot of people expected they would be the number 1 pick in the draft, because we know that last year's draft class was relatively weak. And it really stinks that this is how the system works, but until it changes more than a little bit of odds flattening, it really sort of it allows the Toronto Raptors, with control of all of its first round picks through 2031, plus Indiana's first round pick in either 2026, which is a top 5 projected, or a 2027 from Pascal Siakam, to think long term about these sort of moves and to think about tanking. Now, Barnes is already an all-star, but he does not project to be a guy who can outright carry a team anywhere meaningful. He needs a big-time help, and outside of trading a bunch of those draft assets for a current star, that doesn't really fit Toronto's current timeline. So right now, it would seem like they would be looking towards the draft, and I think the draft would be the best move for Toronto at this point. Again, I'm very, very sorry for any of you guys who have picked Scottie Barnes for fantasy. I really was expecting a very solid season for him, but now that he's going to be out for a couple of games, that